What's up, guys? Welcome to the second take. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jonah.
And we're back for pretty much all football today. A lot has been going on in football, obviously, with NFL playoffs and some other oddities that have happened almost overnight. But real quick, before we get into that, since I do go to Maryland, I have to briefly talk about Maryland basketball, which just beat Indiana on Tuesday night with a huge effort from the one and only Kevin Huerter, who was the second trending item on Twitter behind only President Obama and his farewell address. I'd say that's
Which
pretty
is understandable.
Right, yes, I'd say that's pretty strong. He only had 11 points, but it felt like 50, hitting 3 big threes in the last couple minutes to get a big win over Indiana. And Maryland's at the top of the Big Ten right now, so yeah, just had to talk about Kevin for a little bit since he's from this area and he's killing it right now. So then with that, we're going to go into the NFL now. So in case any of you have not heard yet, the San Diego Chargers are no longer the San Diego Chargers. They are now the Los Angeles Chargers, with their owner, Dean Spanos, choosing to relocate the team to Los Angeles and take the option to join the LA Rams and play in their new stadium, which is not built yet and won't be for this whole season. So that'll take effect next year. But Jonah and I have some pretty strong opinions about it and have a lot to say, so I'll let Jonah kick it off.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I don't like about this. I mean, first of all, the city of San Diego is being rewarded for making the smart decision of not paying for a billionaire's football stadium by having their team taken away from them. So That's the first thing. I mean, so props to them for not being ridiculous and paying for the stadium. Like, I respect that. But it definitely sucks if you're a Chargers fan in San Diego. This isn't a team that's only been there for a little while. Like, the Rams in St. Louis, at least they had been in Los Angeles before. They hadn't been in St. Louis for that long. Like, the Chargers had been in San Diego for, I think, it was, 56 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is definitely, kind of a stick in the eye to everyone in San Diego, especially the fact that they're moving to Los Angeles, which is, which, if you haven't heard already, has another football team, which nobody goes to watch. So adding a second football team that even fewer people will go to watch doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me for the Chargers, for the league, for the city of Los Angeles, or for the city of San Diego. I can't even think of one winner in this scenario besides the stupid owner of the Chargers.
Yeah, so Jonah briefly touched on it, but the reason they're moving, the Chargers are moving, is because they quote unquote needed a new stadium. They could not get it in San Diego because their owner, Dean Spanos, wanted the citizens of San Diego to pay through taxes for the new stadium. San Diego voted this past year to knock that down and not do that, and the next time they could vote on that would be 2018, and they were expecting the same result. However, the NFL was going to give $300 million to the Spanos family to build the new stadium, which was the highest amount of money that the NFL would ever give a team in its history to build a new stadium. So they have that going for them. Next, that family, the Spanos family, according to Forbes, is worth $2.1 billion. I think they have a little bit of money to foot the bill there. And now that they're choosing to go to Los Angeles, they're going to have to pay what looks like it's going to be $640 million to relocate. So you put that $640 million with the $300 million, you're at $940 million, which is pretty close to $1 billion, which is about what a stadium costs, plus a little bit more, which could definitely have been paid for.
Yeah, I guess the appeal for the Spanos family was just the idea that if you have a team in Los Angeles, you're going to make more money just by virtue of being in LA. We'll see whether that's true. The experience of the Rams has not been positive, and that could just be because they're really bad, and in addition to being bad, they're not at all fun to watch. So that could contribute to the fact that the Rams have had really low attendance this year. But what I've heard from people who live in LA is that when you walk around you might see a little bit of Rams gear. There's not a ton of enthusiasm for the team, but like the supermarkets are selling Rams gear and stuff. Like people are sort of into the idea of having a football team there. But the Chargers aren't in like the top 5 of like favorite football teams in Los Angeles. Like it'd be the Raiders are first because the Raiders used to play there. They still have a big fan base there. The Rams might be second, and then like the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Packers, who are just like big teams that a lot of people like, would be right after them. So it's not
and you have like
fan base there.
You have like USC and UCLA, which would pull way more than the Chargers ever could.
Yeah, and the same thing goes for like people are way more into the Lakers and the Dodgers in LA than they are into football. Like they just kind of have grown used to not having a football team. They're a perfectly fine sports city without one, and like with one is one thing, but honestly, it just seems. I mean, I know just having a team in Los Angeles, like, and he's not going to have to pay any money to play in this new stadium that's being built in a couple of years. So that's an upside for this owner, but I think they're going to have a hard time generating fan interest. I'm not sure if they're going to even be able to fill their tiny stadium in the next couple of years before they move into the big one.
Right, and I mean, LA didn't necessarily get a lot of fans for the Rams, but they were averaging like around 70, so that's decent. I don't think the Chargers will ever get near that. And the difference.
I'm skeptical that 70 is the real number there.
I know, but
just eyeball in the stadium.
Yeah, but the Coliseum is huge, so like
the Coliseum's huge. That's true.
But the thing the Rams started in they have played in LA before, went to St. Louis, and then came back to LA. So they already had the fan base, somewhat of a fan base there from when they were there previously. So they still have the fans when they come back. They were welcomed back. A lot of people wanted them back, so that makes sense. The San Diego move doesn't make any sense because they don't have that fan base. Making them move from San Diego means they're going to lose a lot of fans from San Diego, even though it's just a short drive to LA. And then they're playing in a soccer stadium for the first year, which holds 27,000 people. That doesn't resemble a football team in the NFL even a little bit. I know there's some players like Phillip Rivers, who's the face of the franchise, that hate the move and didn't want to move. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like you said, though, they don't have to pay really anything. They're actually going to be charged $1 per year by Stan Kroenke to play in LA. They just don't own any rights towards the stadium, which I think would probably mean that the naming rights will go all towards the Rams, so they'll probably get all that money. And I bet you the Chargers will have to split a good bit of their profit from ticket sales with the Rams. So we'll see what happens, but I don't know. You and I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean the Rams thing, like, it was a little bit of a blow to St. Louis, but the Rams were always like the third favorite team in St. Louis behind. Like the Cardinals are far and away the most popular team there, and then the Blues have been a lot more successful than the Rams have been in recent years. So it wasn't a huge thing, but like I don't know, San Diego doesn't exactly have a really strong sports record, even though they've had a couple of teams for a while. The Padres are probably the saddest franchise in baseball, and now they're the only team left in town. So it's going to be tough to be a sports fan in San Diego. The upside is you still get to live in San Diego. So
right. So now the question becomes, is this going to happen more, since we're already hearing about basically if Las Vegas can find a way to build a stadium, the Raiders are absolutely going to be going there, which I think most people around the league are expecting to happen and could happen as early as this season. So now the question becomes, how does the NFL get involved to keep teams in their areas, and should they get involved, I guess? So do you think Roger Goodell could do anything? Do you think he will do anything to stop what's happening in relocation?
I mean, I think it's worth doing, like keeping teams in the areas that they're in, especially if they're still drawing fans. Like the Chargers weren't necessarily drawing that many fans in San Diego. Like playing a road game in San Diego, if you were a popular team, like like when the Raiders played there every year, there are always like at least as many Raider fans as Charger fans in that stadium. So like that's a team that you could understand moving a little bit, I guess, from that perspective. But I mean, the NFL offering the Spanos family that $300 million towards the stadium, like I don't know what more you can do than that if you're trying to entice teams to stay. I mean, I don't know, maybe you could make the relocation fees even higher and start offering more money to help build stadiums, but I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of rumbling among other teams for moving right now. Like it seems like the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Rams are like the few teams that were kind of the puzzle pieces that had to get moved around. But the NFL is talking about teams in London. They're playing games in Mexico City. So I'm not a supporter of expanding to London at all. But like I don't know. It depends what they want to do, because if the league clearly had a desire to get into the Los Angeles market because the NFL will want to make money wherever it possibly can, and that's the second biggest market in the country, and there was no football team there, so like they weren't really trying to stop teams from moving into that market. But it just comes to the question now, like if you want to get into a new market, like whether that's in the U.S. or whether it's abroad, they have to decide whether they're thinking about moving teams or whether they're thinking about expansion. And those are going to be two very different questions.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't think we're ever going to see a full-time team in London or in Mexico, just because, I mean...
I don't think anybody would sign with those teams.
Right, the players are already complaining about having to play on a Thursday following a Sunday game. Try doing that after going across the country or across the ocean, or...
Yeah, they have to do something schedule-wise.
Exactly. Logistically, I don't think will ever work. I do think we're going to get to more games in London. Like right now we play, 4 weeks? I think there's 4 weeks of games in London.
Yeah.
I could see that probably doubling. You could get to like a rotation where 1 year 16 teams play in London, the next year the 16 that didn't play will play in London. Just let they get all the teams. You can start building fan bases, so on and so forth. But I don't think there's any way that you could actually see a full-time team there. And then the Mexico City thing is, I don't think to me anything more than like a Monday night game like it was this year. I mean, started out with just a preseason game. Now they got a regular season game, so we'll see. But, I mean, the only thing I can think is like, this is somewhat like in the NBA trying to keep the big name player in the small name market. So, like when I think of the Kings, when Boogie Cousins can sign like a $207 million deal with the Kings, or he can sign a $137 million deal with another team. I mean, $80 million to an individual is a huge difference. So if you can just kind of extrapolate that to a franchise and say, I don't know, we'll give you this much to stay here, or if you leave, you'll get taxed this much, and then that would somewhat try to keep them in the same spot. The difference is the numbers are huge when you talk about actual franchises and revenue and moving from place to place. Like, I mean, we're talking about stadiums that are like $90 billion. I mean, there's not, like, you don't have a lot of money, and then you're talking about $90 billion stadium. It gets kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're talking about moving teams and trying to disincentivize that, I think you just got to look at the records of the different sports in terms of how many teams have moved. So in the last, I can't remember how many years it was, but it was in the last like 40 years or so. The NFL, NHL, and NBA have all had at least 7 teams relocate over that span of time, and baseball's only had 1, which is the Expos moving to Washington. So I think that the reason for that is these baseball teams generally are either expansion teams who haven't had a lot of time to like discover that they're unhappy where they are, or they're teams with really deep roots in the cities that they're in. And I think that if you want to prevent NFL teams from moving, you just have to get them this better connection with the communities, because I mean, there's no way the Green Bay Packers would ever leave Green Bay, ever, because that just is Green Bay. Even if they could make more money somewhere else, they'll never do it. And so I think if you want to stop teams from moving, you have to really integrate these teams in the community. And I think that's why with these baseball teams that are so old, who could never imagine leaving, I think that's kind of what the root of that is.
Yeah, and so interestingly enough, I heard a lot of talk about how it's, of course, millennials' fault. God forbid we breathe. But the stadium atmosphere now has to be much more of a great experience. Like, I don't know. That's just what ESPN's been talking about. But how, like, now you see fans going to a stadium, say they bring their kids and they're just sitting there on their phones and like not that engaged into the game or into the environment. Now all those stadiums are trying to create these huge environments that just like breed fandom. And so the three newest football stadiums, so Lucas Oil Stadium was built in 2008, Cowboy Stadium 2009, and then MetLife in 2010. Cowboy Stadium and MetLife both cost over $1.1 billion, and Lucas Oil was $720 million. Those three teams are in the top 15 in attendance. So obviously, and the Giants and the Cowboys are 1 and 2. So like, obviously those two teams have huge fan bases to begin with, but it does seem that if you put the money into a stadium and into the environment, you can reap some benefits. So maybe that's what's trying to happen here with the Rams and the Chargers. But going back to that, the Chargers have the second lowest average attendance to begin with. So they don't have a lot of fans anyways.
Right. That's the one way in which it might be in which it might have been excusable to move the Chargers. I just don't think moving them to LA makes really any sense. I think they should have moved the Chargers to Las Vegas and left the Raiders where they are.
And
That's what I would have done.
I don't get the stadium sharing thing either. Like, I just don't even get it with the Giants and the Jets, let alone like the Rams and the Chargers. Like, could you find two worse teams to put into one stadium? Like, they might never pay for that stadium ever.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna continually fill that stadium. I just don't. I mean, like, if you're splitting, like, the already thin LA football fan base between two teams now, I just don't really see how that'll work. I mean, maybe it'll prove me wrong, and it'll go a long way if those teams get good. But as of right now, it doesn't look like a really sustainable thing to me. Right.
And I'm just not really on the boat of teams changing where they're playing, like just relocating and stuff. To me, if the Giants ever left, I'd be absolutely devastated.
Yeah, well, that's why teams never leave New York.
Right.
Well, the Brooklyn Dodgers did. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was before New York was really New York.
But my grandparents are still sad about it. So,
so you got anything else for that?
I think that's good.
All right. So now we're going to get into the hot topic of the week, which is the NFL playoffs again. We have 4 more games this week with the divisional rounds kicking off. We're going to just pretty much do what we did last week and talk about these teams. So let's kick it off with the AFC, which is clearly the much worse conference. And we're going to start with the one game that looks like you can sign your life away to it, which is the Patriots and Texans in New England. New England opened as a 16.5 point favorite, I believe.
Jesus Christ.
Which clearly shows that there's pretty much a very minimal chance that the Texans can win this game. If you look back at the season, the Patriots beat the Texans 27-0, and that was with Jacoby Brissett as their starting quarterback.
Was that when Brissett had like a broken hand, or was that before that?
That was before. Then he broke his hand, and then yeah.
I was going to say, it would have been really embarrassing.
Yeah, so 27-0. Now they have Brady. I'm surprised the spread isn't like 30, to be honest, but I guess this is about as high as it can get in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think this game has a whole lot. Obviously, the Texans' defense is phenomenal. It's absolutely gotten a lot better throughout the season. Jadeveon Clowney is a true problem to have. And that secondary is much better than people think with a whole bunch of guys that nobody's ever heard of. But they are playing Tom Brady, and the Patriots, as we talked about last week, have the best defense in football. So, I mean, I think this is pretty clear cut.
Yeah, Houston's 2-6 on the road. They're facing the Patriots. Look like the best team in football right now.
Oh, and they still have Brock Osweiler too. Don't forget that part.
Right. Although Osweiler was not terrible.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, I know. I should.
Don't jump back on the bandwagon.
I just can't resist it, you know. But yeah, I mean, just because he wasn't terrible against the Raiders doesn't mean that that Raiders defense was a year before they were supposed to get this far, and they didn't have their starting quarterback. Like, it's not like I'm just dumping on the Raiders. I just think they weren't quite ready yet.
Right.
It's fine. But yeah, as for this game, I don't see any possible way that the Patriots lose this game. I might possibly be reverse jinxing them here, wink wink, but yeah, I think this game could be another shutout, honestly.
Yeah, I think the Patriots will just kind of walk away with this one, kind of like almost a rest your guys in the fourth quarter kind of game. Really, the only.
At what point, like, what's the odds on Garoppolo playing in this game?
Probably.
Can I get odds on that?
What are the odds on if Tom Savage coming in and playing the second half?
Yeah, that's another thing I'd like odds on.
I mean, to me, the only problem with the Texans is Lamar Miller, and he had 30-something carries last week for only 75 yards, so, like, obviously he probably isn't 100% healthy yet because the Raiders' defense isn't anything truly special. Other than having the ability to sack the quarterback, they don't do anything outstanding. So, yeah, you can make the argument the Texans are going to want revenge, but, like, revenge against who? It's good.
If that's all you have.
Exactly. And more or less, the Patriots were playing like it was a preseason game when they played them the first time and still beat them 27-0. So, like, the fact that people think this game couldn't be, like, 63-0 is just kind of crazy. I don't think it's going to be 63-0. I think it'll be like a 31-10 kind of dominant performance where
the spread's down to 15.5 now. So
just because 16.5 is outrageous.
Yeah, but I might take the Patriots even against that spread.
Yeah, it's going to be a very methodical Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, control everything, don't let Lamar Miller go off kind of thing. Make Brock Osweiler make throws.
Were impressive in that game. Like, that was, I don't know, they were playing a team with a kind of exposed defense and a backup quarterback, so you can take it with a grain of salt if you want. Like, Connor Cook was completely overmatched in that game, but that was, like, as good as they've looked in a long time. So you could argue that this will be a little closer than that spread, but I don't see any way. Even if the Texans play the best game of their season and the Patriots play one of their worst games, I still think the Patriots will win.
Yeah. So the next one is Steelers-Chiefs, which is much more intriguing.
I like this game. This should be fun.
This is another rematch where one team was just absolutely obliterated, and that was the Chiefs. So, again, another revenge type of game. All these games are rematches, aren't they? Yeah, every single game this weekend is a rematch of the regular season.
Yeah.
The Steelers looked pretty good, and I'm about to say something I can't tell if Jonah's about to be shocked or not, but I think Ben Roethlisberger is incredibly overrated.
No, I think so too. I was going to talk about this.
You could literally turn around and just stick the ball into Le'Veon Bell's stomach and win every game.
Yeah, I think the thing, like, he's always mentioned whenever there's a conversation about the best quarterbacks in the league, like, you mentioned 6 or 7 guys, some of them change every year, but Roethlisberger is always, like, named in that conversation. But, like, are we sure, like, that he's that good? Like, he won 2 Super Bowls. That's a good bit ago now. And in the Super Bowl against Green Bay, he basically didn't show up for that game. And he always, like, I don't know, every game he like throws up 3 passes that are just like jump balls, and he's had really good receivers the last couple of years, so that's worked out fine for him. But like, he's still a guy who throws picks. I think that the Steelers are going to have to lean on Bell if they want to win this game. I think the Chiefs are a better team than the Steelers pretty significantly, but
yeah, I mean, so going into the season,
I'm taking the Chiefs in this game for sure.
Yeah, going into this season, I think most people would say that the Steelers had the best wide receiver and the best running back in the league. Antonio Brown is at least close to the best receiver. Like, he's definitely top 5, probably top 3-ish.
I would say the top 3 is him, Beckham, and Julio Jones.
Yeah, I mean, he's in the conversation any way you put it. So, the fact to me that they have an above average defense, in my opinion. So the fact that they had to win a game and late in the season just to have a shot to make the playoffs was telling to me. I just don't think Big Ben was much better when he was more mobile and could, like, now his mobility is just standing in the pocket, getting hit, and being able to bounce off the tackler.
He used to kind of do what Rodgers does.
Right.
And he doesn't really do that anymore.
Which you could chalk up to injuries, you could chalk up to age, whatever, but he's not the same quarterback he was at all. And like you said, there's always a conversation of, is he like one of the better ones, one of the better quarterbacks? And to me, it's Rodgers and Brady are clearly the 2 best. And then you have Drew Brees, who I think you can make an argument for. And then I don't think anybody else is really close.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those 3 guys have definitely separated themselves. And then, I mean, you have the Russell Wilson, you have Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, I guess you could kind of make an argument for. So you have guys that are definitely talented and able, but I don't think anyone can compare with those 3 that I mentioned. So, I mean, I feel like the Chiefs should dominate this game, but their run defense hasn't been what it has been in the past, which is scary. And Le'Veon Bell is just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, this guy, you usually talk about running backs getting to full speed before they get to the line of scrimmage. Like, you want to be able to just get to the line of scrimmage, make your move, and go. He flat out comes to a full stop right behind the line of scrimmage.
He's not how you teach running backs, but he's so good anyway.
Yeah, he comes to a full stop behind the line of scrimmage, looks left, looks right, finds the hole, goes through it, and he still has like a 15-yard gain. And he's athletic. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He literally does it all. He's definitely, in my opinion, the best running back in the NFL. So I think that Antonio Brown won't have a huge impact just because I think the Chiefs' defensive backs are pretty solid. When you combine Marcus Peters with Eric Berry, it's kind of tough to get open. But for some reason, I think the Steelers are just going to barely sneak this one out. I think it's going to be a really close, good game, but I think they're going to get the Chiefs just at the end, just because I kind of have to wait and see with Alex Smith just to believe that this offense is actually better than it has been.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't like the Steelers' defense as much as you do. Like, I don't think their defense is really that good, especially their pass defense, which I guess against the Chiefs is not necessarily a huge problem. But the Chiefs always seem to, like, put up points. Like, you look up and down their offensive roster, and you don't see any, like, game breakers. But they always seem to put up enough points, and their defense, I mean, honestly, if you look at the 4 teams left in the AFC, certainly 3 of the conference's top 4 defenses are in the playoffs still, which would be Kansas City, Houston, New England, and then Denver would be the others, not in the playoffs. But I think that this Chiefs defense and this Chiefs team is on a roll, I think, right now, and they got absolutely embarrassed by the Steelers early in the year in Pittsburgh, and I think they're going to want revenge for that. So, I don't know. If I'm the Steelers, I'm not punting to Tyreek Hill under any circumstances, but...
Right, I mean, to me, all the Steelers have to do, I say, as if it's so easy, is contain Tyreek Hill and contain Travis Kelce, and I think you can pretty much wash out the Kansas City offense. However, that's pretty much an impossible task, since as you said last week, there's two guys that are deathly terrifying with the ball, and that's OBJ and Tyreek Hill. So,
right.
I mean, it's not like it's going to be easy, but I don't know. I think if you're looking at strength on strength, it's the strength of the Pittsburgh offense against the strength of the KC defense. And I think Pittsburgh's offense just a touch better. And then if you say the other two aspects wash each other out, then that's why I give the edge just a little bit to Pittsburgh.
No, it makes sense. And they did look pretty good last week, although I think that Dolphins team's not good. So
right, and I think it's safe to say that the Patriots are heavy favorites heading into what we expect will be them in the championship weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
So now we will go to the much less obvious NFC, which was probably even less obvious last weekend, and whatever. But before we talk about these games, I want to tell you and have you guess, which I know will be impossible, so I'm going to have to give you a hint, of Pro Football Reference put out a stat called average value. So they evaluated every player and determined their monetary value, so to speak, based on a point system of 0 to 100. The top 5 players, all of them were in the playoffs. Were is a little bit of a hint. Number 1 is still in the playoffs. Can you guess who number 1 is? And he's in the NFC.
Is it Rodgers?
Matt Ryan, by far and away this year, had the highest average value to his team of any player. Number 2 was in the playoffs. I have a fond liking of, and he's very large.
He's very large. Is it someone from the Giants?
Yes. Snacks.
What?
Snacks.
Is it Damon Harrison?
It is. He had the second highest value to his team of all players this year.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you round out Aaron Rodgers, Brian Bulaga, who's offensive lineman for the Packers, which is, having watched Olivier Vernon flat out not be able to get to Aaron Rodgers twice this season. And
Bulaga's turned into a really good tackle.
Yeah, the Giants had 3 sacks last weekend, and they were all coverage sacks with Rodgers in the pocket for 7 seconds. So the offensive line is outstanding. And then number 5 was Bobby Wagner.
Huh. That's an interesting group.
Yeah. All of which are absolutely fantastic. And funny enough, all of which were in the NFC.
Oh, the NFC was the much better conference this year. It's not even close.
Exactly. So we will start with the Saturday afternoon game. Seahawks and Falcons. This is going to be in Atlanta. Atlanta's opening as 4.5-point favorites. That's probably a pretty close number. These teams also played earlier in the year, and I think the Seahawks snuck one out, right?
Yeah, it was in Seattle. They had a tough call against them. The Falcons did. There was a clear pass interference on Richard Sherman with Julio Jones that didn't get called on the last drive, and they might have won that game if it wasn't for that. But it was a close game, and it was in Seattle. Yeah.
So this is another game where it's strength on strength. The Seahawks defense is the strength of the Seahawks, and the Falcons offense is the strength of the Falcons. Dan Quinn is the new head coach, after a couple of years, head coach of the Falcons, after being the defense coordinator of the Seahawks when they were definitely at their peak as a defense. And he's been trying to craft this Atlanta defense into the Seahawks. Hasn't quite worked yet since they've been pretty much the bottom of the barrel the last few years in the NFL. But they have some sort of tendencies that the Seahawks used to have. So I think this is going to be a great game. I think it's going to be fun to watch. High-scoring offense against a pretty tough, stout defense. A lot of egos on the field. A lot of firepower on the field. Julio Jones against Richard Sherman is always going to be good to watch. So I think this is going to be a really close game. I think the Seahawks definitely showed improvement last week. Thomas Rawls ran pretty well. Offensive line seemed to open up some good holes against a definitely somewhat shaky Lions defense, but Tahir Whitehead, who I think is outstanding, was a non-factor in that game, and that has a lot to do with the run blocking of the Seahawks. So, as always with the Seahawks, it's a matter of can you keep Russell Wilson upright, which would allow their offense to score a little bit. And Vic Beasley was the NFL's sack leader this year, so blocking him is going to be an absolute key to this game.
Yeah, I like the Falcons in this game for a couple of reasons that you just said. I think the Seahawks offensive line is going to have a really hard time blocking Vic Beasley. The Falcons defense in general isn't that good, but I think they're going to get a lot of pressure on Seattle, and the Seahawks offense has a hard time functioning when the opposing defense gets in the pocket a lot, which you saw when they played Carolina in the playoffs last year, when that defense basically wreaked havoc on Seattle. So I think you could get like a somewhat lesser version of that from this Falcons defense, and then the Falcons offense I think should be good enough to win the game. The Seahawks did look pretty good last week, but the Lions are another 6 seed that I didn't think was good. And so I'm not taking a ton from that performance. I think they're going to have a hard time going to Atlanta and winning. That line sounds about right to me, 4.5. I like the Falcons.
Yeah, and Atlanta's a team that has always struggled in the recent past in the playoffs, so this is going to be interesting to see how they respond here. I think it's going to help them that they lost to Seattle in the season and feel somewhat spited by it, just because that's going to somewhat pick up their intensity and stuff, and I think they're going to need that for this game because Seattle's a team that has been here every year. They know how to win. They know all the ins and outs of the playoffs. They know what it takes to get to the Super Bowl. So it's a veteran team coming into Atlanta against a somewhat inexperienced playoff team other than really Matt Ryan. And we'll see how they respond. I think they're going to sneak it out just because Matt Ryan has been everything he had to be and so much more this year. I think if they win this game, he should pretty much solidify himself as the MVP. Just because if you think about how good the Falcons are without Matt Ryan, you're talking about a 4, maybe even less win team with the worst defense in the NFL. So he's had to be everything.
Falcons.
Right. And I wasn't either. I mean, I had them finishing last in their division, and they're the 2 seed in the NFC. So
I had the Saints last because remember how much I hated the Saints at the start of the year.
Yeah, you came around a little bit by the end.
I came around a little, but I was correct they wouldn't make the playoffs anyway.
They were in the conversation until like week 14.
Yeah, they were.
So
the Falcons team was a lot better than either of us expected. I think that's a lot of credit to their coaching staff and to Matt Ryan. And
I don't think anyone saw this offense being as outstanding. I mean, they definitely have weapons, but nobody saw this offense scoring 30 plus a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best offenses that we've seen in the NFL in a really long time.
So, I think Taylor Gabriel is going to be huge in this game. Not having Earl Thomas there is going to be a problem for Seattle, and that's probably the X factor for me is going to be Gabriel for the Falcons. So, like I said, I have the Falcons winning by a little bit, and Jonah has the Falcons also, which then is going to bring us to Jonah's game of the weekend, which is Packers-Cowboys. The rookies get a chance to shine in the playoffs. The Cowboys are opened as, was it 4 or 4.5? I think it was 4.5.
They opened at 4.5, yeah.
Is it still there?
Yeah.
So
I think it might have opened at 4, but it's 4.5 now.
Gotcha. All right. So go ahead. I'll give you the floor.
Yeah. So this is a game that already makes me nervous. I wanted absolutely no part of Aaron Rodgers, as I made clear. I didn't really want to be part of your team either, but I didn't figure you could beat us 3 times, like somehow that God would prevent that from occurring. So I felt a little more confident facing you guys than I did facing Aaron Rodgers the way he looks right now. You can kind of throw out the first matchup between these two teams. That was a pretty impressive win for the Cowboys to win at Lambeau, even though the Packers weren't playing so well at the time. That was still a big win at the time. but this is a totally different Packers team than was around when that game happened. So I think you kind of got to look at it separately. I think people are underrating the Cowboys a little bit. I think that because they overachieved this year, at least relative to people's expectations, people just kind of assume that they're going to come back down. But there's no real indication that the season from the Cowboys was, just some fluke. Like, it is a really good team. But that being said, the Packers, besides maybe the Patriots, look like the best team in the league at this moment. And we were talking about this before. Like, the Cowboys don't really have a strong home field advantage, but it is an advantage the reverse way, that they don't have to play them at Lambeau. Like, the Packers are less good at home, even if the Cowboys aren't more good,
Yep.
So, I think that'll help. I mean, the Cowboys only lost to one team this year in a game that they were trying to win. So, we've proven that we can beat teams like this. I'm a little worried with Rodgers because our pass rush is not good and their offensive line is very good, and our secondary is not great. So I just have these visions of Rodgers just hanging out in the pocket for like 9 seconds and then finding an open receiver like every time, and them just converting every 3rd and 8 and me wanting to die by the middle of the second quarter. Right, you can see that too. Like, it's already swimming around.
I saw it last freaking weekend.
Right, exactly.
I watched the whole damn thing. 60 freaking minutes of that. Yeah, get ready.
So I think that we can score points against this Packers team. I don't think their defense is really very good. I think that we're going to definitely be able to run the ball on them. So I think it's going to hinge a lot on Zeke, because what we have to do is keep the Packers offense off the field as much as possible. And if we can control the clock and control ball possession, that's going to be key. And so though I do think we can throw on this team too, I think that we're going to try to keep the ball on the ground as much as possible. And if Zeke can break through and just bust continuous 5 and 6 yard carries, then I think we're going to win this game. If the Packers can bottle him up a little bit more, then I think we're going to have a really hard time.
So the Giants, I think you would say, have a much better defensive line than the Cowboys, and they have a much better secondary than the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers still had 9 seconds to just friggin' spin around 4 times, sit down, stand up, and throw a touchdown pass. The Giants held Aaron Rodgers to 7 total yards in the first quarter. 7. And we lost by freaking 30.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like the defense just gave up. Like, Aaron Rodgers flat out torched our defense, and our defense played very, very, very well for at least the half, pretty much 3 quarters. Losing Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie was pretty huge. Like I said to you, I'd much rather see us play that team with JPP and DRC. I think there would be a lot different outcome. But taking absolutely nothing away from the Packers, because I think the Giants played a pretty solid game, a game that you'd expect them to be decently close in the end, and they flat out did not have a chance to win that game. You could say whatever you want about the receivers not being focused and dropping passes. As I have said, I think that would have only delayed the inevitable, that the Packers were the better team there, and we're definitely going to win that game pretty much no matter what. Yeah, the Giants could have been up 14-0 after the first 2 drives. No, I don't think it would have changed the outcome. And so when you guys played them the first time, they had the number 1 run defense. Zeke kind of torched them, and then they dropped down a bunch. They've been much, much, much better run defensively in the last few weeks. So I think that's going to help them a lot. I think you're going to get into a lot of 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 kind of scenarios where it's probably a little bit too far to run the ball, but you don't have to it's not 3rd and long. So I think it's going to come down to Dak being able to make those intermediate throws on a really bad secondary. Eli really could have picked them apart if his receivers could have caught a few more balls. And Eli played a really good game in that. So I think that Dak can definitely make those throws. I just don't see any way that anyone can stop Aaron Rodgers. I mean, from what I saw last week, he's unreal. Like, no matter what you do, he's unreal. The man threw the ball 63.8 yards in the air, dropped it perfectly into the arms of Randall Cobb in the back of an end zone. Nobody could throw that with no defense on the field, and he did it with 11 guys trying to kill him.
They have to, rename the Hail Mary pass after
Aaron Rodgers. Exactly.
Because
I'm telling you right now, you want them to kick a field goal before halftime. Do not, even if you think they can't score from the 20-yard line, they can score. You want them to kick a field goal. We had a chance. Jared Cook could have caught a pass with 6 seconds left in the first half, and even if they got a chance to spike it, it would have been a 30-something yard field goal. And I wanted him to catch it because I knew for a fact that Aaron Rodgers was going to have a chance at a Hail Mary, and terrible things happen. So, I mean, I think this is going to be a really good game. I think it's definitely going to be close. I think the Packers getting points is good if you're a betting man, just because I could see it being like a field goal game either way. The thing that would terrify me for you in that it's a close game is that if Aaron Rodgers has the ball at the end of the game, I don't think you can beat him.
Yeah, this feels like the kind of game where whichever team has the ball last wins.
And like you said, I mean, your pass rush is pretty much one of the worst in the league. And I don't trust your secondary, even though it's played pretty outstanding for most of the season. I don't necessarily trust it against Aaron Rodgers. Like, he could make a perfect throw on perfect coverage for a touchdown every time. Like, he's the kind of quarterback where no matter what defense you play, it's not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Cowboys had the number 26 pass defense this year in terms of yards. If you go
that's mostly because you were winning every game and teams have to come from behind.
Well, right. If you go by yards per attempt, we were up to 13th, which is significantly better. But whether you put it in terms of total passing yards, the Packers were the second worst pass defense, and in terms of yards per attempt, they were the worst pass defense. So, and that was not a part of the team that really improved a lot in their hot stretch. It improved a little, but not a lot.
No, it's bad. It's not good. Like, you should be able to pick the secondary apart. Whoever plays them should be able to.
Right, and the thing is, we'll see if Dak's first playoff start is more like Russell Wilson's or more like Connor Cook's, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Clinton Dix is really the only player in that secondary that can have an effect on the game, and he's outstanding. Don't get me wrong, he's one of the better safeties in the NFL, but just because you have a good safety doesn't mean you have a good secondary. So, like I said, I think you're going to get to 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 4. I think Zeke might be able to just barely get 100 yards. I really don't expect him to go crazy. And that's going to come down to how Dak Prescott plays. He absolutely does not have to outplay Aaron Rodgers. There's nobody in this world that expects him to outplay Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, he just won't. So
right.
It's fine.
So
it just won't happen.
If he just can beat Dak, the version that he was in the 13 wins and not the 2 losses to the Giants, I think you have a legitimate chance to win the game. But... And I'm not saying I don't expect him to do that. I seriously, from what I've seen, I cannot see someone beating Aaron Rodgers right now. That's just the only reason I'm picking the Packers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm picking the Cowboys because...
You have to.
I have to, right. But it wouldn't surprise me either way.
I mean, we have 4 teams in the NFC, and any of the possible matchups are all intriguing for the conference championship. So I think no matter what 2 teams win this weekend, you can make an argument that they were the 2 most deserving teams.
Yeah, I think that, these are 4 really good teams. It's the 4 division winners. And they they've all had like interesting seasons in various ways, and it'll be interesting storylines no matter what happens. What I'm hoping in this game is that we get like a little makeup call from a few years ago on that Des Bryant catch, because that was against Green Bay. So I'm still bitter, obviously.
I mean, don't plan on it.
No, I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. But I'm just saying, if we need a makeup call, it would be a good time.
Just make sure Tony Romo doesn't go out to catch a snap, okay? For a field goal kick.
Literally anyone else be the holder. I'll freaking volunteer.
So yes, that's the playoffs this week. Pretty much good games all around, except for one. That's the Patriots, which could theoretically turn into a good game with how good the Texans defense is, but not counting on it.
You can just think of it as like watching a performance of the New England Patriots live.
Yeah, like it's like watching a Final Four team practice, like when they do that thing on NBC Sports Network. Like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. Look at how good they are. Oh crap, there's another team out there. So yeah, I mean, this is much different than last weekend where we had pretty much 3 snooze fests until the Giants-Packers played, which turned into a snooze fest. So
yeah, boy, it was not a fun weekend really for football.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough to say the least. But this should be much better in my opinion, and I think we have a bunch of good teams here this weekend, so we'll see what happens there.
Yep.
So the last thing we're going to talk about is something that both of us have just learned about today, and we're just going to go briefly talk about a little bit, but it's called the Pacific Pro League. It's going to be a football league started in California. Tom Brady's agent is one of the main players in forming this league. Also, Mike Shanahan is going to have a pretty big role as an advisor to the league. It's for high school graduates who are not enrolled in college, so it's like a prep school kind of thing. So basically what happens is these players go to California. It's a 4-team league. 50 players are on each team. They get their tuition and books paid for at a local community college in California. They then would play for $50,000 in this 4-team league over the summer, and it's starting in 2018. So the idea by the starters of the Pro League is that it's supposed to challenge the NCAA. That probably has no chance of happening. The main thing that we can get out of it, I think, is the possibility of paying college athletes, or at least just challenging and changing the archaic rules of the NCAA. You and I are 2 of the bigger haters of Mark Emmert and think he's horrendous at everything he does.
Roger Goodell.
Yes.
Could
Yeah, so he's the NCAA commissioner. So yeah, what are your thoughts about the league?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they like calibrate their expectations for it correctly, then it could be successful. Obviously, this isn't going to become a challenger to the NCAA because no recruit is going to say, well, I need to make money so badly that I'll go play for $50,000 instead of playing for Alabama. Like, if you're an NFL prospect, there's not even really a financial reason to do that because you'll lose money that way. So it won't be like a rival to the NCAA, as you said, but it could be a possibility for guys who aren't going to get major D1 offers and would like to kind of showcase their skills somewhere else. But it definitely puts less pressure on you than even already exists to go to class and stuff. Because, like, obviously at some schools, I doubt the Alabama football players are really spending a whole lot of time doing schoolwork. And I'm quite sure that the North Carolina football players aren't. But this would be even less pressure for that because there's no organization really overseeing you, mandating that you go to class and stuff. There's no academic eligibility stuff, so this could be kind of a place to go for A, kind of lower tier recruits, and B, people who are having disciplinary issues in the NCAA might just leave school and go play in this league instead, which is another place you might see this league kind of develop into. But I don't know. My concern for it is like where they're going to get the money to pay the players and pay for their community college tuitions, because I can't imagine like huge crowds at games of this. So I don't know where the money's really coming from.
Yeah, I mean, like community college tuition and books, say that's what, $5-6 a year.
Yeah, I mean, it's not nearly as much as a regular school, but
plus the $50,000 they get in like salary, so you're looking at anywhere from $55,000 to $60,000 for each player.
Times 200 players.
Right. I'm sure they'll get sponsorships from places. I mean, having Tom Brady's agent and Mike Shanahan as like two of the bigger proponents, that's a pretty good start. Basically, what I look at this as is an arena football type of thing where it's like a semi-pro league. You get a little bit of money in hopes to get recognized, but it never really works out that way.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of football leagues kind of come up and then go by the wayside. There's so many examples. There's like arena football. There's the UFL. I mean, these are all the XFL. Like all of these leagues were started, and yes, they were more like oriented towards challenging the NFL rather than challenging the NCAA. But I think you're going to run into similar problems because these NCAA programs are even more established than the pro teams are. I mean, they've certainly been around longer than most of them.
Yeah, and the fan bases of these college teams continue to grow every single year that they admit their next 20,000, 40,000, 10,000, however many students they admit. So, like, you have to find a way to grow the fan base of this league. Fans drive. Sports is an entertainment business, and fans drive that business. You have to have viewership in order to grow and get better and better. The NFL has a lock on it. The NBA has a lock on it. MLB has a lock on it. NHL has a lock on it. College sports has a lock on it. So it's really hard to just be like a startup company. Like, the only thing I can think of that's ever been successful is the basketball tournament every summer where they play for $1 million. Who the hell doesn't want to play for $1 million? Like, obviously that's going to be successful because you get a chance to win a lot of money. And then I'm sure this Ice Cube 3-on-3 thing will be great just because it's a whole bunch of guys that everybody has watched throughout their career, and now we get to see them play 3-on-3 in their 50s where they can barely get up and down the court. Now they just have to stand there and make a couple cool plays. So things like that are successful because they have huge names or lots of money involved, and this doesn't necessarily have either of those aspects. But like I said earlier, hopefully it just challenges the rules of the NCAA, and all it's really going to take is like one or two guys. I don't know, say someone gets kicked out of like Alabama as a fantastic recruit and looks at this league as like a last chance you kind of thing.
That's where I could see it succeeding.
And that's what they need. Like, they're going to absolutely need that in order to just have a chance. Other than that,
they'll probably try and do like these undercover operations, like get college players in trouble so that they have to go to this league.
Like send the agents to the parties and just be like, oh, he was with an agent.
Yeah. Or just like get some people to like slip guys some coke or something and then like get them to fail their drug test. It'll be great.
I mean, I think it could be fun in the fact that like you have, I mean, like the quarterbacks from Texas that ending their college careers throwing for like 20,000 yards over 4 seasons as like a 2-star recruit and go to, I don't know, SMU to play football. Like maybe they try this instead, but I'm sure there'll be a heck of a lot of points scored, and a lot of football fans like points. So maybe that's, I don't know.
Yeah, we're really saturating the California football market, like, obscenely right now.
Maybe Roger Goodell has everything to do with it. You think Roger Goodell and Mark Emmert are kind of like Putin in that they kill their opponents? Like, maybe this guy's the commissioner of this next league is going to wind up dead.
It's like Putin and Trump, those two. They're like buddies, and they like to kill people.
Yeah, and the commissioner of every following league will end up dead or challenged in some sort of way.
Yeah, they just find, like, Adam Silver, like, with, like, 2 gunshot wounds. They're like, what? What happened? Who did this? And they'll clearly have been Roger Goodell.
It says, like, Tom Brady was here spelled incorrectly on Adam Silver's forehead.
Yeah, right. They're just trying to frame the guys they don't like. And another New England Patriot arrested for murder.
Who knows what's gonna happen? But I'm sure something will happen. So that's the gist of it this week. Next week will probably be more NFL, just because that's pretty much the only big game in town right now. But there's that college basketball is really hot right now. I highly suggest tuning in throughout the week.
Lots going on.
Yeah, a lot of fantastic teams. There's like 20 teams right now that have a legitimate chance at winning a title. And the ACC it's bad. It's good. I mean, it's good, but like it's bad to be a part of because it's impossible. You have to have
a conference this good since that one year that UConn finished 9th in the Big East and won the national title.
Yeah, I mean, I seriously feel that there can be 10, 11 teams in the ACC that make the tournament.
Yeah.
So, and Boston College won another one the other night, by the way. Beat NC State pretty bad.
Yeah, NC State is having a rough year.
Yeah, Dennis Smith Jr. is probably a top 5 pick, and his team is going to finish in the bottom of the ACC, so that says a heck of a lot.
Well, yeah, that Turkish center they got is clearly not ready.
Yes, Omer Yurtseven, of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about college basketball in the near future, but a little bit more football involved, and we'll see what happens. Oh, and also, shout out to Clemson. Just want to say I called it.
Yeah, I lost some money on it as well.
Yes, I may have texted Jonah when it was 14-0 and told him Clemson was going to win the game, and I may have gotten a little bit of odds out of it. So, anyways, shout out to Sean Watson.
I even negotiated you down on the odds.
Yes, you did. I was confident.
What I thought was a smart bet.
I was legitimately confident.
Nothing Bama, and I thought they would have won anyway at the start of the game. I was like, all right, it's easy money for me.
Truthfully, if Bo Scarborough doesn't get hurt in the third quarter, I think possibly the outcome is different.
He did break his freaking leg.
Yeah,
so.
I fully expect him to run on one leg next year and still run for 2,000 yards. So, anyways, but yeah, Deshaun Watson. Can we find a way to get him in New York? Not in the Jets, on the Giants.
Yeah, I was gonna say you might be able to get him on the Jets
or the Bills. Either just put him on the Giants. Seriously, if we traded up, got rid of like 3 picks, traded up, and drafted Deshaun Watson in the first round, you would not hear a single word out of me.
Well, I don't know. You were pretty critical of their pick last year, and that one turned out okay. So
yeah, he got better throughout the year, but I was pretty critical of their pick the year before that, and we all know how that worked out. I'd trade him for a water boy at this point.
That guy freaking sucks.
Only offensive tackle that's ever not known he's supposed to put his hands on the other guy across from him.
Yeah, like as if that's not intuitive. He's just like, let me just like back up and get in his way.
Yeah, he only shoves reporters. He doesn't shove defensive linemen. So, anyways, goodbye, Eric Flowers. We'll see you all next week, and thanks for listening.